Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me for another episode of Digital Soul Presents. I'm very honored to have this brother on here, a good friend of mine, very talented keyboardist, pianist, classically trained, also producer, songwriter, band leader, supporting band artist, also author, just an entrepreneur. So I'm glad we're going to try to touch on as much as we can in this time, but I want to welcome brother Danny Bedrosian here to the scene. Thank you so much for coming here.
Oh man, JD, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you. So how's everything been going, man? Everything's been going all right?
Yeah, it's been good. We've been busy, just been working, gigging, getting ready to go back out on the road for some dates in George Clinton Parliament-Funkadelic, and just working, playing, practicing, recording, just keeping busy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So for those that don't know, Danny here has been a very vital piece of P-Funk for 20 plus years. Kind of, as amongst the many keyboardists that have passed through the army there. And he himself has also one of the big reasons why I wanted to have him on too as well. First things first, man. Very excited about this new project that he has coming on November 15th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, November 15th. Being a part of the P-Funk camp for so many years, Danny has decided to take on the task of putting together the most complicated thing on earth that a lot of us enthusiasts are always asking questions about. Who played on what record, who produced this, who did this, who sang on this. And Danny has taken the task of doing this. How long have you been working on this project now?
Longer than I've been in P-Funk. So
Yeah.
maybe 30 years.
Yes, so it's been a long time. So this book is about to drop on November 15th. So one of the reasons we have him on is we're going to start off talking about the book. If you don't mind just filling us in about this big book, man, for all of our P-Funk enthusiasts here.
Yeah. Once again, thanks again for having me. And the book is the Authorized P-Funk Song Reference, 1956 to 2023, encompassing P-Funk's recorded discographical history. Essentially, though, most importantly, listing who played and sang on all the records. That's the main kind of goal of this tome. And like I said, 30 years in the making, but COVID afforded me the opportunity to have the downtime, alone time at home to not just be able to practice all the things I never get a chance to practice as a pianist, as a working pianist, but then also to get this book, make it reach fruition. So it's published by Rowman and Littlefield. The finding of the publisher probably was one of the most long, like that was almost as long as putting all the information down, on the computer in a lot of ways.
Imagine.
That was the whole thing. So we're really glad to have them. But it's something I've been, when I was a little kid, even in school, middle school, high school, and college, I was like, when I should have been taking notes, I was like making lists of like, these are all the songs Ray Davis sang lead on. And then, these are all the songs that feature Glenn Goins on guitar. And these are the ones that, it's stupid things like lists and lists and lists. I've always been, and all my astrologically inclined friends say I'm a textbook Capricorn, and so it's things like this and this book. I remember it was like August of 2020, and I had just gotten over a really bad bout of alpha COVID, really bad. I had been in and out of hospitals for like 5 months, and I'd moved to a new place out in the country where I am now, and was just like, I'm gonna spend 5 to 7 hours on this thing every day. So like it was the most regimented time in my life. I wake up, I ran 2 or 3 miles, I come back, practice 4 or 5 hours, and then work on the book 5 to 7 hours.
Wow.
make a quick dinner, do some exercises, maybe watch some TV, go to bed, do it all. Like that was like
Uh-huh.
every day during the pandemic, essentially for me. And I still try to keep some of that regimen. I still run, I still practice every day. But now that the book is done, that major amount of time is obviously used for other things. But being a history major, I'm officially a degree holding historian. So I went to school for history, and because I'd already done 18 years of classical training under my parents' tutelage at their music school. So by the time I went to college, music major was not it. I was already a working musician. I was
Yeah,
already
yeah,
working with George and them.
right.
So yeah, I was just like, let me do this history major. It's something else, just in case, for whatever reason there might be a need, maybe,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and there was. This is it, And so like to make it as legitimate as possible, they used to always say in the historiography classes and stuff, legitimation is everything. You need primary sources. So my main thing was, if the liner notes are secondary sources and like published information is secondary, then the primary would be direct from the mouths of the people who were in those sessions. So I did over 140 interviews with 70 plus past, present band members,
Jeez.
engineers, staffers, people who were there from all the different eras of
Mm.
the P Funk and all the different groups because I had to fill in real serious gaps for things that I did or
Yeah,
didn't know,
yeah.
and uh, and that was what I did over 24 hours with George alone of interviews, so maybe 26, something like that. A lot. We did a lot of hours of interview, and that was just with George. And like I said, I did like 70 something other guys as well. But like I really tried to focus in. Okay, if I don't have somebody for this period, I got to find, this like one very specific example I'm just going to make real quick is I didn't buy any Bootsy albums after I joined P Funk. So I was buying all the new Bootsy records when they came out all through college. And then when I joined P Funk, I just wasn't out at the record store buying records as
Right,
much.
right.
And I'm in the P Funk camp, the Parliament-Funkadelic camp. So I'm getting whatever's coming out of that camp as it
Hmm.
comes. But the Bootsy camp being adjacent but separate, I just didn't have those albums. So I needed to
Right.
find,
Need to
who am I
catch
going to
up.
exactly.
Yeah.
So who am I
Yeah.
going to interview? I got cats from the old Bootsy's Rubber Band who I
Hmm.
talked to, many of those guys, but this is kind of later stuff. So I talked to this
Right.
dude, Tobodius, who was a DJ and an engineer who worked on all of Bootsy's albums from
Hmm.
because the last one I bought was probably Play with Bootsy,
Okay.
'03 or something
Okay.
like that. And so I needed everything after that. So who's the best interview? This guy, because he
Yeah.
was engineering and would have the session,
Right.
session sheets and all that kind of thing. So that was like a good choice. When uh I was doing the brides, writing down their information. I got to find as many brides as I can get, Dawn,
Hmm.
Sheila, so Satori, and trying to get
Yeah.
as many brides as I can get.
Yeah.
Same thing with any of the groups.
Yeah.
Quasar, talking to Greg Fitz, another great keyboard player who was in Quasar. You gotta, so like there were different things, and there were a couple albums where I didn't get everything. You know what I mean? There is some
Hmm.
information that is still sort of a mystery,
Hmm.
because maybe somebody didn't take an interview. There were like four out of the like almost 100 people that I probably approached. There might have been four or five that didn't respond. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
in those cases, it'd be like digging deeper, finding people from their band, finding family members who might know
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
whatever could be done. So it was a real like a deep dig. But the cool thing was, since I'm from within the organization, a lot of the cats, and even cats who like where our tenure is separated by 30 years,
Hmm.
they trusted me more than some journalist or some college student or some
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
because they know I'm in it. I've been living it, breathing it
Mhm.
for as long as them, in some cases longer, for
Some
some,
longer,
just
yeah.
because I've been in it for a long time.
Hmm.
And so they trusted me because they know that I understand that I'm,
Right.
it's a simpatico thing.
Mm.
And I wanted to do it because not all the information's out there. Like, you made a really good point when you said, we want to know who played on what, who sang on what. Me too. I did too. And there are
Hmm.
band members from the various generations who, like, that was our, like, oh, I wonder, do we know who that, little things like that. So
Hmm.
the information is pretty much out there in the ether, but every day, every month, every year, more people die from older generations. And
Mm.
they could be fans, they could be engineers, they could be musicians. You feel me? So it's like you're losing this information as time goes on. I
Yeah.
remember and this is just like the simple kind of textual who's on what type of stuff. Then when you get down to like the bare bones, like, which isn't in the book, but like the bare bones, like how to play the parts and what the feel is, and the chordal phrasing and the just different things, that stuff is being lost like the samurai in the turn of the century, because we had lost however many. I made a list one day where it was like how many we had lost versus how many we still had from all the
Mm.
different eras,
Yeah.
and we're still winning. The living is
Okay.
still above those that have passed, but
Okay.
those that have passed are from some really important eras and moments. And I just felt like, wow, this time is passing. It's passing so fast. And with the pandemic, it was just like, now it's more finite than ever. We don't know what's happening. So,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about legacy. It's about putting things down for all time. So I wanted to do it for that, and I wanted to do it for my fellow band members who, like me, we've all been miscredited or uncredited once or twice. It's
Yeah.
nobody's fault. It's just
Yeah.
a part of the fact that this is so massive. And I'll never
There's
forget
so
the
many.
first time it
Yeah.
happened to me. It was a live album, and it was a European import, and whoever had done the personnel info, they just took like a copy of the band rider from a different year. So it was, all the names were wrong, not just me. Like, everybody was wrong, and and one of them was even a DVD. So you're seeing me, but it says somebody, So, and I know this had happened to my fellow bandmates even more times than me, a lot of them. So I was doing it for them too. So it's for the fans, it's for the
Yeah.
band, the band, and it's for like the whole legacy of this thing for people who
Yeah.
don't know, for the layperson, not even the hardcore P-Funk fan, to understand. Oh, this is way bigger than I thought it was. You know, some people know that P-Funk is the most sampled band of all time, but not many people know it's the longest running popular music group of all time. That it's the longest running group with the leader still alive of all time. That it's the biggest discography of any one production unit of people of all time. That it's the largest group in numbers of all time.
Yeah.
You know, and 68 years of history as of now, and moving, constantly growing and changing. So I know this is just a time capsule, it's a snapshot, but it's a good 68-year snapshot. So you got.
Yeah. I mean, that's covering a lot, man. And I know, like myself too. Growing up, I know you mentioned, growing up as a kid, you got into it early. Same here, a lot of my
Mhm.
friends. So, the vinyl, when we were buying the records, we were scouring the comic books and the pages and the little small Overton Lloyd print and the Pedro Bell cartoons and every little nuance and who played this, and there's Boogie on this, there's Fuzzy on this, there's Grady on this, and now we're starting to see the names pop up on other projects. Okay, now it's a little confusion going on. They're
Yep.
all over the place. Like, who's singing what? But then as you get older, you start to meet some of these guys, and you find out Bootsy actually played drums on this track. Boogie actually played drums. He's a bass player, but he played drums sometimes. Like, you hear sometimes things about Mudbone playing drums on track. Like, really, it's quite a surprise. So this is actually going to be a good breakdown. I'm very, very excited to see what's in this book and where it navigates us to exactly where the point to the point of where the songs were played on what and so forth. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And there's a lot of surprises. It's a lot of stuff that that I had known, but then there was also things like I remember in the in the 90s, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so we had vinyl in the house, but when it came to my P-Funk vinyl, there was some, but it was cassettes were the
Yeah.
hottest thing in the car, and and man, with the magnifying glass up to the Pedro Bell liner notes, okay,
On the
like
cassette.
yeah, the cassette liner notes with it unfolded like um but yeah, no, we I was there too, and then other things that sort of helped but also made it worse were like, do you remember like the Mother page?
Yeah, yeah,
All right, so which
absolutely.
was great at the time, you know what I mean?
Right,
Duke University, they had this
right,
thing,
right.
it was back when college P-Funk was like really biggest in the college scene,
Hmm.
and they had this thing that was supposed to sort of give some of the information. It gave
Right,
select songs,
right.
but then I came to find out later that I was all wrong. Like almost all of that is wrong too.
Hmm.
But like, some of it is like halfway right. They'll have like a
Right,
few names right, but then they'll have some that are totally wrong.
right,
Or
right.
like the Family series, which ingeniously collects tons of unreleased stuff from like the 78, 79, 80, 81 period, but all the liner notes are wrong. They're just totally
Oh,
wrong, you know?
oh. Hey,
So,
that's gonna be interesting to me because I have all those.
yeah, they're all wrong. They're all
Oh,
wrong, and like
oh, that hurts. That
the
hurts.
primary interviews prove it time and time again because
Yeah,
everybody agreed. Like, oh yeah, that's not so and so. That's the, I'm like, oh yeah, right. Well, that
yeah.
makes sense. I always wondered why and yeah, there's a lot of that, and things that seemingly impossible things have been remedied, but there's some stuff, and I talk about it in the book. There's some stuff that you just never will 100% get, and so I talk about like what I've left out and why,
Yeah,
without giving away too many details. But like I talk about what I don't mention in the songs,
yeah, yeah,
because it's either already common knowledge or because it's just too impossible to ascertain. So
yeah,
like there's some stuff I just had to leave out. But the important stuff, the personnel, that was like the main thing. You
yeah,
get that who sang, who played on all of those. And then there's like nice little like bios of every artist. So every group that made a record of any kind. So it could be Pat Lewis, or it could be 3GP, or it could be, I mean, and everything in between.
yeah.
There's a little bio of each one, Funkadelic
Wow.
or Mutiny or whatever. And then all the songs that charted have little descriptions too. So
Okay.
every song that kind of made it on the charts has an extra little paragraph about
Very cool.
what makes it important, some things about the personnel. And then, there are some controversies still, but like for the most part, and I've said this to a few people, it was really interesting with the primary source interviews, there was only like 5 or 6 times where the answers differed, where
Okay.
it was like, where people were fighting. And out of all those, 90% of them was about drums. But like I said, it was only 5 or 6 songs, and
Okay.
the ones that it is, I mention sort of what the controversy is and why they say that it's this or this. So like there's like
Okay.
a little bit of like, okay, now check it out now. This could be this person and it could be this,
Right. Right.
but there's very little of that, way less than what I thought. When I
Okay.
was going into it, I'm like, I must think I'm crazy. I know myself and all my bandmates, this is going to be a million different
Impossible.
answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a million different answers for a
Yeah.
million, but it was pretty right across, like
Yeah.
real consistent. Everybody was real consistent, and so that was really cool. You
Yeah.
know.
That's the thing. You got to get it's been a lot of time passed, so you got to figure out who remembers what. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's older now, so it's a lot, 40 years worth of stuff. What would you say was the hardest era to cover, in your opinion?
Hmm. Um. Well, no one era was super hard. It was more just certain acts within the context of an era. So like um George's memory of the early stuff was actually better than of like he pretty much left it up to other people post Glory Halla Stupid Uncle Jam. Like
Mhm.
around that period, he's like, ask Clip, ask Don, ask whoever, ask Muddy, ask whoever. In
Yeah.
whichever case where it sort of made sense. Ask David, ask, whoever. Um, but he was really knowledgeable of like 1956 to 1976. Like that, he was like, this is who it is. And like I said, all of that period stuff, there was like almost no debate. Like from the other
Wow.
primary sources, they said the same thing. There
Wow.
was very few surprises. Like I said, of all those like controversies, it was like five that were about drums, and it was one that was about like a group vocal thing, and it was a way random song. It wasn't a hit, so it was like I was really surprised. It wasn't that. It wasn't that. Con, you know, it wasn't that bad. Like in
On
terms
that
of like,
beat, huh?
yeah, yeah. But like I said, there was definitely some surprises that I was like, oh, because so many of us are like corrupted by like the Mother Page and Family Series.
Yeah.
I definitely
Of
was,
course.
because I was just like, oh, so it's not. He's like, no, he was on the other album. He was on. I don't know why he's listed for that album. He's on this album. I was like, oh, and then checked with two or three other sources. Yeah, that's the case.
Mhm.
Even though it's not listed anywhere in the secondary sources, And there were some situations where I had to go with secondary sources because it was just, how far of a rabbit hole are you gonna go? Like after a while, like I started adding things where it's like, okay, two or three band members, okay, or two band members are on the record, it's going in the book. Okay. If Bootsy or George are on it, we're gonna try to put it in the book. Okay.
Mhm.
If Bernie's on, I'm gonna put it in the book. Okay. And then I start just like going deeper and deeper. If this section played on it, it's in the book. So I had to eventually find places where I'm like, okay, I'm not putting this in.
Yeah.
Um, and I did that with some of my like most of my solo and Secret Army catalog is in there, but like other productions, even stuff that has other P-Funk members, I had to leave some of it out because I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, it's just so much, and
Yeah.
there was a couple people like that. I'm one. Eric McFadden is another. I included a bunch of his albums, especially the ones that are like the most P-Funk connected. But
Okay.
then, like as it gets further afield, I try to be like, well, that's its own thing, you know, or like a more outside of P-Funk example would be something like the Temptations.
Mm.
I got Shaky Ground in there.
Okay.
Um, and I probably even have something about Can't Get Next to You because a lot
Okay.
of people don't know, that's the da it's Norman Whitfield got that from Funkadelic, this
Okay.
Can't Get Next to You, can't get next to that whole thing. Um, so there's like little things. It's like, okay, it's Funkadelic related, or like Shaky Ground, that's Eddie Hazel and Billy Bass. As P-Funk fans, they consider that's P-Funk. I mean, it's P-Funk with the Temptations singing. Um, so there's stuff like that, or like Disco Lady, Johnny Taylor, any number of things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid to go obscure. If it was a real release, if it had been actually released, I tried to include it in the book. And like long rides with George, he just sit there looking at me, and he'd be staring at me and making faces. I'm just like, oh no. He goes, Did you get Harriet Roberts? Only the Lonely. Virgin Records 1987. I'm like, what? No, what? What is that? Yeah, me and Blackbird did this. I produced it. Da, 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 da. I was like, oh man, okay, yeah, all right. Let me go put that. And of course, my publishers probably were tripping the whole time. It's funny because as recently as yesterday, the book is so done, so done. As recently as yesterday, I was calling one of the editors and saying, I got this name I need to add for this song. They're like, yeah, it's fine, Danny, it's fine, because they've been getting this from me all the time. Like when I first passed in the manuscript, they're like, we're noticing that the page count keeps going up. Are you still adding stuff? We're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm I'll be scared out of my mind. All of a sudden, I see something, and it's happening every day too, JD. Like I'm
Mm,
like, oh man, this. Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to chalk that one up to like, but as you know, it's as in depth as a one person possibly
yeah,
have made it.
yeah.
Although I am seeing here and there, oh, maybe I should have
Some
included that,
pieces
or
still left out,
yeah,
huh?
but arguably pretty obscure.
With
Like the things,
small pieces, yeah.
yeah, the things that I'm talking about, like some album where there might be like one band member that might, that's on, so it's as in depth as it can possibly, I think, be.
Dang, that's good, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure a lot of us are going to be looking forward to it. It's going to do very well because we
Thank you.
we are always still curious about the P. As many years as they've been around, we still admire the drawings, the artwork, the lyrics, the players, the names, all that. So we all are very very excited to see and read all of this now, finally laid out. Right in front of us. We don't have to no
Thank you.
longer scour those cassette tapes and vinyl.
And
we
even
got, we
then,
got a
not
book.
necessarily. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I understand you're from Massachusetts, right? From back east, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What city back there?
Lawrence.
Is that
So
near Boston?
it is. It's just north of there. It's an industrial city. Yeah,
Hmm.
was born there in '81.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have roots in Boston. My father was actually born there, so I have
Oh,
yeah, people actually from there, man. So yeah, that's
oh, nice.
yeah,
That's
and then
awesome.
yeah, and then so growing up as a child and you said Lincoln, is that what the name of the city was?
Lawrence.
Lawrence, Lawrence. So
Hmm.
growing up in
Yep.
Lawrence, you started off very, very, very young. Like you said, you're classically trained, parents and siblings, all pianists and classically trained.
Yep.
What was that like coming from a house full of music all the time?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. A house full of music all the time. That's the best way to put it because it was my parents had Bedrosian piano studio and
Very cool.
so the school was in the house.
Wow.
So we had students coming in and out of the house all day. All
Mm,
day deep into the late hours of the night every day. So my sisters were practicing, my parents were practicing, students were coming over and playing. There might be 3 or 4 pianos playing at the exact same time at
wow.
all times, at all
Wow.
given times, except for maybe Sunday when they didn't teach. But my dad was the choir director and my mother was the organist, and we all had to sing in the choir at a local church
Mm,
where they worked. So had to be raised in the church too, as well as the classical training. So we were singing too and doing choir rehearsal and all that stuff. But the main thing, yeah, was the classical training, the lessons, recitals, um, tons of practicing and competitions and things like that every year. And it was a great, formidable musical beginning. But it was crazy. And
hmm.
lots of kids my age that took lessons, so it was very competitive,
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
very competitive, and then with my siblings as well, I guess, but I think probably more so with the kids, my peers that were my age,
Hmm.
um, and having to live up to my parents' expectations or trying to as well as possible, um, because they were the teachers. And then, a lot of the other kids who try to pick on me think that some kind of way I must have it easy because I'm the teacher's kid, and it's so not the case. I can tell you. My daughter can tell you as one of the only both my daughters as the two only non-paying piano students that I had. It's like I promise you that they don't get special treatment. If anything, they get
Yeah,
worked harder. They get worked way harder because
yeah.
I don't have to worry about their parents saying you're working them too high because that's me. So,
Exactly.
and I think my parents felt that way. They were like, we don't have to worry about these are our kids.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you're my son. Yeah, you're my
yeah.
daughter.
So, and I think, if they ever saw um, that that some kids were thinking that I got off easy, if anything, that'd probably make them give me something even harder.
Yeah.
And they got me into really progressive modern music, even modern orchestral music, like really early, and had me playing stuff that was a little bit more dissonant than what the other kids were playing, which is cool because it was getting my ears trained for new sounds, dissonance, modern sounds, postmodern modernity, and like compositional ideas. Because in Western music, you know, up until a certain period, like everything had to be a certain way, and then when they start breaking those boundaries and moving things around, it's really cool, you know, because it still has form. You just
Hmm.
have to figure that out, like how that is. It's some of the most difficult stuff. So like I was really into a lot of that kind of thing, and it kind of primed me for my studies with Bernie afterwards because you know he was also classically trained, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
going from my dad to Bernie, I mean, two and my mother, I mean, the three probably baddest pianists I've ever heard in my life, pretty
Yeah.
much, are those three. So, what a blessing, what an honor to study under them. You know,
Yeah.
although granted, it was not ever easy. You know, never easy, but amazing. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
At what age did or what age and then do you remember you heard your first Parliament-Funkadelic song or artist or whichever it may be?
Yeah. So I heard it through, you know, coming from my era, I heard it through samples first.
Okay.
And then, yeah, uh, and probably the first one was, it was probably Cosmic Slop sampled by Ice Cube. And that was probably the first, it was that Gary singing, I Can Hear My Mother Call. Either that or the sample of I Got a Thing that Ice Cube did.
Okay.
So both were, I think, prior to the Bop Gun that he did with George, but
Okay.
were of that time at least. So
Okay.
like I was 11, so 92, 91, 92.
Okay.
Um and then got into P-Funk like immediately after. And the first two albums I had, the first real P-Funk song I heard was Get Dressed, because Computer Games was the first full-length album that I got.
Okay.
And at the same time that I got that, I got something that had come out. It was a reissue that had come out in the 80s, Parliament's Greatest Hits, The Bomb, that orange cover.
Mm-hmm.
So I had gotten that and Computer Games, and that was 92,
Okay.
probably. I was 11. And those were my first P-Funk records.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So from there, you also became a keyboard tech for them early on in your career too, as well.
Yeah, yeah, pretty early on. I had done studio work with them before I'd gone on to do teching.
Hmm.
Because it was the work I'd done with them in the studio that allowed me the opportunity to be able to go out there to the shows and do some teching work. So I was actually teching before I was even out of college.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the when I first started working with them, I was as young as like 17, 18, but that's when I was recording stuff with them in
Hmm.
Monticello, Florida. I was flying down on like spring break and things like that.
Hmm.
And then my first teching gigs, I was probably 19. So 2000, 2000, 2001, and then a little bit in 2002 as well, mostly in the Northeast because that's where I'm from. So like New York and New England. And then 2003, I moved to Tallahassee after I graduated from college in New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire, graduated in '03, moved to Tallahassee in July of '03, and got the keyboard gig in September of '03. But my first year or so, I was playing and teching still.
Ah,
So I was teching for Razor, Jerome, and Bernie, and myself, and playing.
double duty.
It was like a basketball player, like
Wow.
crazy,
Wow.
crazy, crazy, crazy.
Do you remember your very first one where you played, or what
Yeah,
state, what concert?
yeah, yeah. Well, the very first one I did was in Tallahassee, and it was a
Okay.
show at a place called the Moon. And it was like whenever we played at the Moon, we'd always have like a skeleton crew. It would always be like some band members, but not the whole band. But it was still an official George Clinton Parliament-Funkadelic show. It wasn't listed as anything else. Um, but I think that might have had something to do with the venues in Tallahassee being a little frugal. Um, but I was on Fender Rhodes. I played Fender Rhodes for the whole show. I had that, and it was kind of like a fog. that first show for me, just because I was so excited. I don't really remember it super well.
Yeah.
Um, I think I did okay, but it was
Yeah.
very much in an auxiliary role. And then when I came out on the road and started doing teching, and playing, they'd have me play like certain songs. I played Red Hot Mama every night, and I played. Then Gary started putting me on One Nation, um, and then they started putting me on like auxiliary keys on Flashlight, either strings or the other synthesizer parts, and things like that. And slowly working my way up, with more and more songs.
Right.
But if I started in September of '03 and I was doing spots in the show after that, it was June or July of '04 when I started doing the whole show. So so maybe 5 or 6 months before they put me on to then I was doing the whole show.
Very
Um
cool.
yeah. And that was at a time when it was me and Bernie and Jerome. And
Wow. Wow.
so it was really cool being able to like have three guys doing things like Aqua Boogie where
Oh
there's so many
yeah.
keyboard parts. So it
Yeah.
was cool having those like assigned, I'm gonna do this, you do this, you do this. Like that was
Yeah.
really cool. Um but yeah, yeah, so
Very
it was
awesome.
excellent. Yeah.
You have a tendency when doing the live shows with the P man of digging into some really, really good deep grooves. I've heard some songs, some of my personal favorites, like "Baby, I'll You Something Good" or
Oh yeah, nice.
"This Broken Heart." Some of those things.
Yeah.
Do you have a tendency to go into to some of those grooves? What are some of your favorite, not non-single P Funk songs to perform, and
Yeah.
personally?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, so many. Um, George has ever since like 2014, 2015, maybe a little bit before that, had me do like these monologues, like you were saying before, Maggot Brain, and let me
Mhm.
kind of do what I want. And I'm always trying to just break out things that we never do, you know. And I'm a sucker for the really early stuff, like
Yeah,
early '60s, mid '60s, Northern Soul. I
yeah,
love that stuff. Love it, love it. I love the early Westbound stuff, even the B sides and things. Like I
yeah.
love that stuff. I love the Osmium stuff. My favorite album is Let's Take It to the Stage. That's my favorite album of all time. So anything from that, um, and but like specifics, Put Love in Your Life. That's one of my favorites from Osmium. The song is familiar from Let's
Okay.
Take It to the Stage.
Yeah.
Let Me Be from Chocolate
Oh
City,
yeah. Oh,
Open Our Eyes, which I used to sing in church. And I think I naturally just kind of got a voice like Eddie. So, like, at a certain point when they started having me sing in P Funk, they
mhm.
gave me a lot of Eddie's parts.
Okay.
So they'd have me singing the Eddie parts. So, like, I always took a natural kind of, like, I can do the character voice stuff too, but that's like a definite, like, an actor doing
Yeah.
a voice, like,
Yeah.
like George always say. But like the Eddie thing just kind of comes more naturally. It's just my natural sort of timbre is like that. Um, so like those ones I really like doing. Open Our Eyes, um, Whatever Makes Baby Feel Good from Downstroke. I just
Yeah.
got back from Downstroke. All you could
Oh
eat.
yeah.
Oh, those are my jams.
Yeah.
Holly wants to go to California, and a lot of times too, I'd be trying to look for things that are piano centric, so
Yeah.
that I can, because that moment in the show, uh, for the most part, nobody's going to back me up. It's just me. I
Mhm.
might every once in a while there might be somebody singing a line with me, or maybe Clip will hit a hi hat or a tambourine or something. But like there won't be like a ton going on at that moment. So I try to pick the more kind of like thoughtful, solemn, because A, those don't get played
Mhm.
because of that. And B, here's a moment where you can do it. You might as well do
Right.
it. You know what I mean? Any way that I can add more songs onto the list that of things we can say we've done live, the better to me. Like
Right.
I we started doing Nappy Dugout in Japan on this last tour.
Mm.
And I just asked him, I said, "Can we do it? Can we do Nappy Dugout?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Great, cool, let's open with it," And and it's a great opener. I mean, it opens the Cosmic Slop
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
It's an amazing opener, and we're even doing it a lot like the record, where like, and this is super nerdy kind of music stuff, but like where the third time that it goes to the change, or that it goes to the main, it only goes to it once, and then it immediately goes to the change again.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
even did that. You know what I mean? We did it just like the record. So
Mhm.
I love that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
more of that stuff we do, the happier I usually am.
Hmm.
A Joyful Process from America
Mm,
Eats Its Young. I broke that out in Paris one time,
mm.
and then the whole band came in and we did the whole song. It was amazing. So every once in a
Dang.
while, you be having those moments. You know what I mean? You might as well take
Yeah,
advantage. So you try to get as much of this stuff played. You know.
absolutely.
Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Let me turn it on my power strip so the computer don't die.
Okay.
I'm right here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's all
Cool.
good.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So another part of the P Funk history, as you mentioned in your book, and as anybody knows, man, the history of P Funk has many offshoots. That there's just
Right.
too many to name, and you yourself have become a part of that. You have branched off into Danny Bedrosian's Secret Army. You've also branched off into playing in a couple other groups, 420 Funk Mob. Talk a little bit about branching off into those groups, and then also, making your own band as a band leader.
Yeah. I think about something Gary Scheider used to always say, because my early years in the group, I studied under Gary real heavily, and I never really left his sight, to be honest. My first like decade in the band, I was kind of just there with him.
Hmm.
And he used to always say, I'm in everybody's band. And I just be like, that's amazing. I love that. And so when I first joined P Funk, I was too. Like there was one period, 2006, 5, 6, 7. I was probably, and this is no exaggeration, I was probably like 12 bands,
Hmm.
and was just playing so much. And, it'd be 2, 3 shows a day, sometimes just
Yeah.
busy, busy, busy. And, but I loved that work ethic, and I love the idea of getting where you fit in, and figure it out, and you know you get all the things that Gary had sort of instilled in us. It prepared me for the ability to do something like that. And then over time, as you get older, you start breaking down how many you're going to be in. It gets kind of not whittled down, but you sort of whittle it down yourself based on your needs, your
Hmm.
time, what you think is worth your time, or what makes the most sense for your life, your schedule, your aesthetics, and all that.
Yeah.
And Secret Army was one of the things that came out of that time. I started it in like '06, with Blackbird McKnight and Lige Curry and a few other guys, and the band started from there, and I just kept it going. The first 3 years we didn't do any like major touring, but we were playing a lot of spot dates and opening for P Funk and doing all kinds of stuff. And then around '09 we started doing our own little tours, and it's just continued on from there. And we just put out, um can I promote, JD? Is that cool?
Absolutely. Let's
We
see
just
it.
put out the new album. This is the ninth album, Lost Froth
Lost Froth.
2. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the second Lost Froth. Um, the first one we put out back in 2012. The
Hmm.
first Lost Froth there. It's another live album. This is
Okay.
the second version, and it basically details like um a whole bunch of the live show that Secret Army
Okay.
does, and it's got myself, Lige, Blackbird, Benzel, Greg Thomas, whole bunch of people on it. Um, and so yeah, we're still working, still touring. We got more shows coming up in December. I'm gonna go promote with Secret Army when the book comes out. So there'll
Dope.
be some P Funk shows. There'll be some Secret Army shows. I'll be doing some college appearances for like a week at a time at certain different
Okay.
colleges around the country, and a few bookstore appearances, some brick and mortar stuff, and so yeah, that's sort of the plan for that. But like yeah, Secret Army was always my vehicle when I was off the road with
Hmm.
George. And speaking of off the off on the off days, as 420 we would say, we did I did 420 for years, still do,
Yeah.
with Michael Clip Payne and Mike Hampton, Lige Curry, Gabe Gonzalez, and all those great guys, and those are my brothers, and been playing with them almost as long as I've been playing with P Funk.
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
So yeah, Clip is another just mentor to me. I just always was such a fan of his production and his style and his bands, and always been just, yeah, it's always been a good time. And it's a great, because that's that same ethos of like, what can we do, what can we play that like we never get to play,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know. And Secret Army and 420, we be doing that kind of stuff, like
yeah.
let's do
Absolutely.
Loopzilla, let's do Wars of Armageddon, let's, you know, let's get crazy, you know, let's do
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. I'm a witness, man. You guys,
Yeah,
if you have not seen Danny's Secret Army or 420 Funk Mob, definitely, because they go into the rarest of the P Funk catalog. You know, the shit
right.
that you just don't normally hear on radio airplay.
Yep. Yeah, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, they digs deep. And then, and besides though, there's a few other bands. What are some of the other bands you played into? Because you played in
Oh man, I mean, over the years, every I played in all of Rico Lewis's bands, drummer Rico Lewis, because he was in Secret Army with me for years as
Mhm.
well. I have a band, Something Fierce, which is my Tallahassee band.
Okay,
Played in Blackbird McKnight's band, played in Children of Production, played in Divadelic, played, you know, basically backing band for Kendra Foster, even band directed for her a little bit.
okay.
Uh, uh, my goodness, so many people's bands. So
Yeah.
everybody who's been in the band, I've been in their band.
Branched off into the ears, yeah.
Lige Curry band, Elijah Delic. I've done a couple of Elijah's band, Naked Funk. I've sat in with them. I played in a group in Tallahassee, a really good funk and ska group called the Solar System.
Okay.
Who put out a few. I produced their second album back in '06. Played in a group called Asphalt Panda, which is like a fusion group. Produced a million, you know, other artists that you can find their albums and stuff online, and where you get my music. And um, yeah, lots.
Never ending,
Cacophonic,
huh?
yeah, never ending. Cacophonic Funk Mob and
Yeah, that's
Drugs and
awesome.
all
Yeah,
that stuff.
man. What is your let's talk gear for a minute. What is your go-to for as far as gear? Their synthesizer picks, or what do you kind of go to the most?
So I use the Novation Bass Station 2
Okay,
as my go-to synth.
okay,
It's the little guy. I use it for synth bass and for leads and solos, and I program all the sounds you hear. So
okay.
like the flashlight synth bass, I made that sound, and then like the leads and solos I use in the shows, those are all sounds I created from scratch on the Bass Station 2. So I use that for live for clavinet and organ. I just use an old Nord Electro
Yeah,
261. I
yeah.
got, you know, every one of those is a little different, so it's cool. They're all kind of custom, but I got one that I really just love the clavinet on, and it's funny because I've replaced that keyboard 3 or 4 times, and I always gone back to it like, nah, this has got the best. It's broken. It's got the best old, just rickety clav. It's funkiest clav
Yeah.
outside of a real clav. And then we use the Moog Voyager for like a lot of other synth sounds and sound
Mm,
effects and different kind of Bernieisms and things.
yeah.
And then I use this guy that I got right down here, the Roland RD 2000
Ah,
for that's my go-to piano, Rhodes,
okay,
polysynth for like Atomic Dog, and strings for things like
okay.
Tear the Roof Off and Flashlight and stuff like that. So those are like the main keys I use with P Funk specifically. But I pretty much use those when you see me use those same things when I'm doing anything from like George's art shows to Secret
Mhm.
Army, or even gigs. I do my classical gigs, my residencies with that Roland RD if there's no piano at the venue, you know. So um, I use that stuff from these days. That's my rig. It's
Yeah,
subject to change, but
right,
these
right.
days, yeah.
Is there anything that you don't play that you had before, like as far as gear that you had previously and you just trashed it, decide this will never work?
Tons of stuff, tons
Okay.
of stuff. I mean, because 20 years, the rigs changed so much. I mean, when I
Yeah.
first came in, I had we all had Roland JD 800s, and like micro Korgs. We had like a whole Nord leads and
Mm.
Tritons and stuff. I don't use any of that stuff now.
Oh wow.
Um,
Wow.
and then after that, there was a period where I was using like Yamaha CS1X. I still like that in the studio. Um, we were using motifs for years. We were using, I was using the MO8s for years. I was using like the keyboard that was in the Roland RD2000 position. That's the one that's changed the most over the years.
Okay.
So like,
Okay.
there's always some new workstation coming out, some 88 key, because it has to be something that's weighted and something that's 88 keys.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you can think of all the kind of workstations that have come out through the 2000s and 2010s.
Mm.
Those are most of the things that I used: Yamahas, Rolands, Korgs.
Okay.
Trying to think of the Korg Cross. I used the Korg Cross for a while in that position. I used the Casio PRS series, was like the weighted series. I used that in that position for a while. I used the not the Motif and not the Mo X, but the Yamaha MM8. I used
Okay.
that, and that we had a few of those in that position for a while. That's the keyboard that gets replaced the most. The other
Mm.
things, I mean, the Moog and the Nord Electro, I've had since my time starting, and then
Yeah.
the Novation I've been using probably since 2015,
Okay.
14, so almost a decade. And but yeah, the thing in the big position, the big kind of piano weighted key instrument, that's the one that's changed the most times. In
Okay.
my 20 years, it's probably changed 8 times.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane. Wow. One of the other things I do want to touch on too, before we go, talk a little bit about your background because you are also a comic enthusiast, collector, and
Yeah.
an author as well. You also have a comic called Sons of the Sun. Talk a little bit about the creation of your first comic as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I was always into comics ever since I was in like second grade. I used to collect Marvel comics, X-Men, Fantastic Four, all that stuff. And I was always, I was bit by the comics bug really early.
Mhm.
Even though I've been playing piano since, you know,
Since it
84.
was knee high.
Yeah, since I was knee high. There was a period from when I was 8 to before I discovered people, like 8 to 11, where
Mhm.
I wanted to be nothing but a comic book artist. That's what I wanted to be. And I like my art style then was far more advanced than anything I can do now. That's why mostly I write now. I do layouts sometimes.
Yeah.
And you'll see me do the occasional artwork on an album or two, but I hire guys. I work with great art teams
Yeah.
on the comics themselves, but I wanted to do something with my Armenian heritage. There's a lot of great Armenian history. It's a very old nation,
Hmm.
proud ancient history, and they've got a great mythology that's never really been explored in like fiction. And you see, Norse stuff with Thor. You've seen like the Greek gods, or you see
Yeah.
Egyptian gods, or whatever. But this is like a cool, it's its own thing. So I just wanted to do. I felt like it was a great playground to kind of work with for the comic.
Mhm.
So we've done 3 issues of Sons of the Sun, and then now we have this just came out, the Ultimate Collection, and this is a hardcover, 120 page. They call it trade paperback. Some people call it graphic novel, but
Oh, that looks
it's
nice. Yeah.
it's really cool,
Yeah.
detailing all 3 issues, plus some process stuff in the back, and a sneak preview of the book on the
Ah.
very back with a QR code.
Ah.
So people get
Okay.
like the first real physical sneak peek of the book. You can get through the back of this book. So, uh,
Absolutely.
am I allowed to post prices and
Yes, absolutely, man. Promote, promote,
so okay,
promote.
so the album 25, or the graphic novel for 50. Again, it's 120 pages, $50. And they can send the money to my PayPal, which is info@dannybedrosian.com, Cash App, which is $Daniel Bedrosian, or Venmo, which is at Daniel Bedrosian. And they can send the money there. All albums and comics come with a free gift. You get a free gift no matter what. And if you buy both, you get $5 off. So and you get stuff, I'll sign stuff. It's from me specifically, so it's kind of better. Some fans appreciate that kind of thing, like
It's
getting it direct from
personal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
personal. You get it direct from the source instead of through some third party or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, how long was the process for that book altogether for you? Start from beginning to end.
For the comic book,
Hmm.
yeah. So number one took us forever because we were just trying to figure out how we were going to do the
Okay.
process. Um, and I work with two artists, Robert Eman, who lives in the Netherlands, and
Okay.
Steve Grezik, who I grew up with. He lives in Massachusetts,
Okay.
and uh, and I work with a few other people here and there. Every once in a while, I'll hire an editor. Every once in a while, I hire a different letterer or something. But for the most part, it's me and those two guys. Robert did the first issue with me. Steve did the second issue with me, and then the third issue we did together. I had them do it both together. And what I
Okay.
do is I create the script. Well, I create a plot. I sit with it for a really long time, months and months, sometimes longer. And then I create a script out of that plot, which is really in depth. Like the script itself is much longer than the comic book, probably,
Okay.
because you're describing panels where there's no words. So I'm
Hmm.
just like, there's parts of the comic where it's like, oh, Danny, there's no words. I'm like, yeah, those parts are way more pages than the
Yeah.
parts with words because I'm trying to describe in extreme minute,
It's
like,
just a picture. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what is
Right.
happening, what this is,
Right.
and they had to go and create that from the scripts.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of like we have like a little group chat or whatever on Messenger. So we're just because I'm in Florida, one's in Massachusetts, one's in the Netherlands. So we're like, all right, I got these pages. What do you think about that? I don't like the bleed on this edge here. What are we gonna do about this? Okay, yeah, we gotta fix this. Okay, and then it's also a crash course for them in like Armenian history, architecture, costumes,
Right.
mythology,
Right.
design, aesthetic, everything from like the carpets. Like I tried to make everything as authentic
Yeah.
and correct as possible. It's like, oh no, you can't have that there because you know they wouldn't have been that religion. That religion didn't exist yet, or whatever. We have to like
Oh
take
yeah.
this
Yeah.
iconography down and change it with something else. Or
Mm.
oh, yeah, that type of building design wouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. We have to make it an older style of
Yeah.
architecture. Little things like that. I tried to like really be so. The first issue, yeah, it was crazy. It took
Mm.
we were like coming up with the idea and plotting it out for like 5 years, maybe longer. And then everything kind of fell into place once we figured that out. But I still didn't know if I was going to keep going with it. It could have just been a one and done.
Yeah.
It sold really well. At the time, it was selling better, even better than my albums were. And this is like
Wow.
before pre-pandemic. It was
Uh,
doing way better than the albums.
mm.
So then when the pandemic happened, it gave me impetus to create more because I was like, well, we have this time,
Mm.
and at least we kind of have the formula now, and it's selling well. And now that it's COVID, people are way more into physical product than they were before.
Yeah.
People are starting to collect like for the first time in like 40 years, baseball cards were worth something. Like to me, that was like, okay, well, if that's working, I can make a second issue of this comic
Yeah.
book and
Yeah.
feel okay about it. And and so we continued on. The second issue maybe took a year. The third issue took 9 months, ten
Not bad.
months.
Not
And
bad.
so like as time went on, we were able to kind of whittle down that
Yeah.
that work time
Yeah.
into something more deadline oriented. And like the goal is to keep going. So we're like, even though we got this first collection, we're already starting working on number four. And I'm considering possibly now, a lot of these independent companies to publish, they need three finished issues.
Hmm.
So now we have three finished issues and a little collection that looks nice for them. I might use this as the sort of like promo materials
Yeah.
to reach out to some of the smaller the indie companies like Image and Fantagraphics. They're big companies, but they're independent.
Right.
So outside of the big two, and uh, and so yeah, that's sort of my goal with that. And so now that we have that, I'm gonna try to push. And even if we don't get the deal, we're just gonna keep making them independently because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
funny thing about publishing is you don't really make a ton of money in that world. You make more money if you promote. Like if you promote, you're good. So
Mm.
right now, the way we're doing it, we're making way more money on this book than we would have made if it was for a company.
Wow.
So the idea of getting into a company's hands is for the main reason just for more eyes to see it and more hands to pick it up. But
Wow.
what ends up happening once it goes to that bigger company is the artist, the creatives take a huge take out a huge they lose a chunk because you're not able it's not like a speculator bubble anymore where like there's a finite number of issues. Now
Hmm.
there might be 20,000 or something,
Right.
you
Right.
know, or who knows, you know, whatever the number is out there in the wild, and now you're getting like an 8% royalty or something
Mhm.
instead of being able to charge whatever you want because there's only like this many copies and it's going to go really fast, and you're able to kind of do your niche thing with it. So
Right. Right.
independent still in a way is
Much
like the
better.
yeah, but if but now we're at a point to me sort of where it's like, well, let's see if we can get more eyes on it. What will that do and what will
Hmm.
that look like, you know? So since it's been sort of like like a labor of love and sort of an experiment anyway, like a happy successful experiment,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, we thought we'd just see how that goes and maybe
Right.
see
Right.
if some companies are interested, you know.
Yeah, man. So far, the success has been enormous. I remember early
Thank you.
on around the pandemic when it first dropped, man, and yeah, a lot of people were really praising it, and it's still a hot book, man. So I'm
Oh, thank you.
looking forward to seeing the next one when you decide to go ahead and get that one out too as well.
Uh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Now you have some Masters of the Universe, your
Oh
collection
yeah.
back there in the
Hey.
back, man. Let's take a peek at that. So you got some stuff back there, man.
Yeah.
It looks
These are
like an
the
actual store.
it does, doesn't it? These like this is funny because it's like uh Batavian, who many of
Wow.
y'all know, she always was telling me, you know, you don't really get anything for yourself. She was saying this to me a couple years ago, like you
Yeah.
don't spend any money on yourself. Every once in a while, I get comics, but like even that is my business, so even that's like a write
Yeah.
off now. So
Yeah.
like this is kind of like something she started getting. You know, when I was little, I used to collect the old ones, and now they got these Origins figures that look just like the old ones. And you know, I tore mine to shreds as a kid. Like I ripped the legs off. I did every stupid thing,
Yeah.
and some of those are like really valuable now, and like most
Yeah.
of mine are just in garbage condition. So she started buying me these, and
Wow.
she even got me this one today for Father's Day right over here. So like
Dang.
you know, because I'm gonna be gone for Father's Day, I'm gonna be on the road. So
Yeah.
they got me a couple of nice gifts, my
New
kids and
additions.
Batavian. Yeah. So it's just something I hang up in the studio and
Dang.
like, you know, and I kept them in the package. I think it just looks good, you know, and if I wasn't hanging them on the wall, I'd have nowhere to put them, you know. So
Yeah.
I just it seems like the best possible place, you know, keep them in the package. They look nice.
Yeah. And
And
you
it's
can
a
see them.
yeah, yeah, and it's a nice conversation piece. You can definitely tell what era I'm from by seeing
Right,
this
right.
one.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you know, coincidentally, some of the first comics, if not the first I ever read, were the little comics that came in the back of these toys,
Hmm.
and they were all like fantasy and action. So you know, that stuff all plays in later.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. You got quite a collection there. And that's it right there. Do you have any other?
Yeah, this is it. No, this is
Okay.
it right here. Yeah. So like, and you know, I got a few in the that are still coming in the mail too that I've
Yeah.
ordered that I'm waiting on. But yeah, it's kind of like a new fun sort of
Like a
hobby
hobby.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that is dope, man. I love it.
I'm super like aesthetics is everything to me. So it's like I'm not the type who's gonna open like my one of my daughters is like, we have to open these like this. I'm like, no, no, no. You know, I like the way it looks, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
No, she doesn't understand yet. She doesn't get it. Like, don't touch it, please.
yeah, she's like, no, we need to play with these. We need to put their weapons in their hands and the helmets on their head. You know.
Oh man, that is so awesome, man.
Thank you.
Man, and Danny, I'm so glad to have you on so we can talk a little bit about the new book, the comic book, and also some of your projects. You got a new Secret Army project coming out soon, besides the Lost Froth one.
So there will be another studio album coming in the
Okay,
works. There was
okay,
a couple, there's actually a couple studio cuts on this album too
okay, okay.
that
So
were
there'll be some
like,
video cuts from there.
yeah, because
Okay,
there's about four on there. And
got it.
they're
Okay,
like, it just wasn't enough for me. I didn't want to make an EP and it wasn't
okay,
enough for me to make a full length. So just like the first Lost Froth has a couple studio cuts, this one does too. And
got it.
actually, there's one on there called Duality that's the first cut on the album, and it's one of the best things I've recorded in years, and it's super funky, super funky. So I
Oh
want everybody to
man,
check that out. But yeah, no, we'll have another Secret Army album in the works soon, and we're gonna be
good.
back out on the road in December too with Secret Army, back up in New York and in Boston and in Maine and New Hampshire. So we're gonna be back up around the Northeast, playing out and stuff.
Good, that's awesome. And I know by the time we drop this video, you will be already back on the road with P Funk. What are the next upcoming dates coming up for the P? That's happening real soon too as well, right?
Yeah, we're going to Charleston, South Carolina, and Oak Grove, Kentucky this weekend. And then in July, there's a couple spot dates. I think Detroit and Lawrenceburg, Indiana, in the middle of the July. And then we have that big run from July 25th to August 26th, I think, is what it is.
Okay.
And nice big long month. And then again, also we come back to LA and San Francisco in November as well, right after the book comes out. So I'm going to try to do some kind of extra promotions in LA and San Francisco in tandem with the book, because it'll be 10 days after it comes out.
Cool, man. Yeah, November's
Yeah.
gonna be a hot month for you, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'm there, man. You know, whenever you guys come to town, man, to the LA area or Orange County area, you know, I'm there. So I'll be looking forward to seeing you and hanging with y'all again. And if you do end up having some dates for the Secret Army or the book, you know, I'll try to make it down and support you as well. So you always have my utmost support, man.
Thank you, JD. I
Yeah,
appreciate you, man, so
yeah,
much.
absolutely. Now, if you don't mind, before we take off, Danny, if you can go ahead and just drop your handles where people can find you, your material. Once again, Facebook, Instagram, whatever handles you like to go ahead and propose.
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's just under my name, Danny Bedrosian. You can, if you're really interested in my catalog and you don't know where to start, or you just kind of want to get a whole bunch of stuff, you can join my Patreon. It's just patreon.com/Danny Bedrosian. And every month, depending on what the tier is that you join, you get new stuff every month. And I just go backwards chronologically. So my very newest thing, you get that the first month, free gift. The second month, your free gift is the next thing back. And then we can play this game forever. So we'll do that. And yeah, and check out the new album and the new comic book.
Awesome. That's so awesome. We thank you so much. Multi-talented keyboardist, pianist, Danny Bedrosian here in the house. We thank you so much for stopping by Digital Soul Presents. We hope you stop by again. We're looking forward to all your future endeavors and that book. Please get that book. All you P-Funk fans, get that book. It's popping.
Nice.
We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.